Hi everybody, Creative Katie, Karen Burchill here. Welcome to an art journal tutorial. This is from the Break the Blank Page, What Comes Next series. So I broke this page by collaging down several layers of just plain old tissue paper. Lots of texture on here, but it's very white. And I just decided that I needed to break this page a little bit further, get down some pattern. So I grabbed these Tracy Scott stamps and I haven't used them, and I'm just stamping with them with black archival ink. This time I don't even know if it's going to show. Spoiler alert, it ends up really showing only in a minimalistic kind of way later on. But I did love the pattern of these, so I did not put these stamps away. They are going to be used again for another project. And that's a great way of dig out those things that you're not using, put them in some of these initial first layers. And if you're liking them, now that you've reminded yourself about them, it's going to guide and inspire other pages. So I'm just stamping on here. And so this kind of set the tone for a floral thing, and it helped guide that decision of what focal image. Now, the colors that I wanted to use here, I knew that what I wanted to use, and I wanted to use yellow and orange and white gesso. So I'm going to apply those with a makeup sponge using what I call the block and blend technique. And basically all that is I have the colors that are next to each other, typically on the color wheel, and I know they're not going to make mud. They're going to make pleasing third, fourth colors, and I'm just going to blend them as I put down color in the blocks. It's a quick, easy way to do it. I find I get better blending using this technique than when using a brush. And adding gesso lightens it in some places. It becomes more opaque, which is why some of that background stamping disappears. And it gives a very soft, floaty kind of look to the page. If it gets a little too dull, you can come back and add more color. Let it dry, you can totally change the color. Now this got a little too pink. I want it more yellow. So I come back, I grab a paintbrush, I'm painting white gesso in a few places, and then I'm coming and putting some more yellow, introducing yellow, because I want it more light and bright on here. But I didn't want this to be so perfect, right? Now comes the fun part of layering stencils. So I grabbed this Fantastical stencil and white, and I think here I'm just using gesso because I have it out, but you could use white acrylic paint. And I'm just applying this. Now this is a larger pattern, and I really want to lighten and brighten this page even more. I'm turning this stencil, even though I'm using the same motif, I'm turning it different directions. Some is going off the page, some is on the page. So again, with the stencil, you can use parts that you like. You don't have to use the entire stencil as it was being designed. This one's called Climbing Vine, and it's new to me. I think it's the first time it's using it in a page. I'm coming with the quinacridone magenta, and this time I'm using the entire stencil. I know because I had used those initial stamps that I want to go floral with this, so this is going to be kind of like a background, leafy background. And I'm just adding a little more here and there, just to round out the stencils and get from edge to edge. At this point, I don't know if I'm going horizontally or vertically with this page. So I look at it both ways. I'm loving the colors here. It's just very pleasing to me. edging it a little bit since I've got some dark color there. And, sometimes I want to do that to help frame the picture. And sometimes I do that because I'm not sure what the next step is. And I'm just giving myself some think time. The magenta is a little too bright. So I'm coming back with that same stencil. I flipped it the opposite way and I'm using the white gesso. And again, that softened it. All these little details add to the whole, but you're not going to necessarily look at this and say, oh, that was this stencil or that was this stencil. They're just going to all work together. Now I'm taking the white gesso on a makeup sponge, and almost dry brushing over the top of that. And you can see how it's bringing out that texture that is there from the tissue paper application. This is also kind of almost doing a wash over everything and pushing back the bright colors and softening the whole thing. And I keep doing this and building up layers. You're not pressing down very light. You can use a blending tool like this. And I come in, I'm using the magenta. But I decide that I really like that white frosty kind of look. So I give up on adding more magenta and come back in with white. And I'm loving, loving, loving that frosty, cool look. It pushes everything back and really gave me a background that I absolutely adore. So I went through my focal images and I came across this one, which is from Raw Pixel, where you can get some graphics. And I have it in two sizes. You're going to see that. And then I had that butterfly from that napkin. So I'm cutting out all of them and auditioning them. I decided to go with the big orchid, and there's that little bit of green in it, so I thought I needed to introduce some of the green to my background. So I grabbed the Screen View stencil and stencil it in. And I chose that Screen View because it's very small in scale. I didn't want anything too big. I just wanted that hint of green in the background. And then I gave a wash of color to some of the buds there, just to make the green tie in together. I wanted to introduce a little bit of black in contrast to the background, so I grabbed this script stamp from the Stampers Anonymous, I believe it's called Reflections, but I'll link it and the stencils in the description box below. And I'm just using archival ink here. I'm looking for another stamp here, and I grab Bitty Grunge, another one from Tim Holtz and Stampers Anonymous. This is kind of a mesh, and I'm stamping with it. And I like this mesh one. It goes really well with the Screen View. Kind of has that square look to it that just adds to the whole page. These are just little details. And the Bitty Grunge stamps are a good collection of grunge that you can add to page just for this exact purpose. So before I glue anything down, I want to figure out my sentiment. And I have a few from my Embrace Possibility sentiment pack, which is in the works. And so I print them out and I'm just additioning them. I cut it into this rectangular shape first. Sometimes I leave it like that, and then sometimes I cut them apart because you can do all sorts of things with the sentiments. You don't have to leave them exactly as I have them. in the pack. So here I'm getting rid of a lot of that white, and that's my thing. I don't like to have a lot of white, and if I do leave a lot of white, I tend to colorize the whole thing. So I'm liking that look. Putting it down here is a little tight, and because I want to put that butterfly on here. Now this is a napkin from ninniesnapkins.com, and there's a link and a code in the description box. You can go check out her stuff. She's not just napkins. She carries TCW stencils and mediums and lots of mixed media supplies, and she'll be expanding that as well, and she ships internationally. So this napkin, I'm not using the majority of it. The rest I'm going to save for another one. But I am going to use this little butterfly. It's the perfect color, perfect size for this page. So you can use one little element from a napkin. Now, napkins are great sources of focal images and color schemes. Lately, I seem to be on a roll with collaging and mix and matching collage elements from different sources, napkins and free printables, or magazine pictures and stamped images that I've colorized. So I'm playing with the composition, seeing where do I like this? Do I like this here? And as you can see, I've turned the page. I actually, instead of going vertically, I've now gone in the landscape mode, which is quite common for me. Now, just because it's a free printable doesn't mean you have to leave it exactly as it is. So I cut that off, and I'm just shortening it to fit my page. I don't want to, I could have just cut that part off, but I wanted that there. Moving it this way, moving it that way, trying different things. And then when I think I have something I like, or several options, I grab my camera, my phone, and I take a picture, and then I can just see, do I like it? And then when you take things up, you will have a source to go back to remind you of where you exactly had it. So now I am using gel medium to glue this down. And the reason I'm using gel medium instead of matte medium is twofold. One, the cutouts are on thicker paper. And two, there's a lot of texture there from the tissue paper, which makes it a little bit more difficult to glue everything down. So I'm applying it and pushing it down and making sure I've got good adhesion. It's always a battle when you have texture. So if you're using modeling paste or put in texture in any other way, that's something that you need to consider later down the road in just your choice of product. I always use matte finish, whether it's gel medium or fluid medium, because I don't want that shiny glossy. If this was a canvas, I do a final varnish and I do use gloss or satin finish. But at this stage of the game and my art journals, which I rarely varnish, I don't want it shiny or little parts shiny. I just want it matte. So the color scheme here is very analogous. colors next to each other on the color wheel, and the background is the same colors as the focal image, which means I need to do some more shading of this focal image to make it stand out from the background. And I tell myself this when I choose it. Of course, you're going to be shading. So here I'm going in with the quinacridone magenta, and I'm kind of slightly altering the color of this orchid, and that's perfectly fine. Then I'm using the floating acrylic technique to edge the page with black. And then I'm going to shade on the outside of this orchid. So I'm on the actual background, not on the orchid, but I do some on the orchid as well in a bit. And just add shadows. I'm just trying to be ever so careful. I don't want a lot of the black shading on the orchid, just a touch. I do come back to some areas and do a little bit more, but you apply it over time, little by little. And I'm going to do the shading around the sentiment as well. Here I'm going back, just adding a little bit more to some areas. I'm using the General's charcoal pencil. This is a medium. Just adding a bit of line work on here. Very sketchy, very lightly. It doesn't smear as much, the medium. Here I've grabbed the soft, and I'm just using that to smudge around the outside edges. It's the finishing work that just really bumps up the page. When I've got yellow in it, I love to splatter with gold. So I'm splattering with gold paint that's been thinned with water. I just keep it in a container because I tend to do a lot of splattering. I hope you love this page as much as I do. So here is the recap. We started with layers of tissue paper. That just was breaking the blank page. And then we did some stamping that we really can't see right now. But it broke the page further and set the tone. I applied color using the block and blend technique, and it was an analogous color scheme. These are the colors right here that I used. I did some stamping and stenciling to add interest, pattern to the background. And then I applied paint with the makeup sponge on top to bring out the texture from the tissue paper. I collaged the focal image, and I used a napkin as well as a free printable. I added the sentiment to the page, shaded the whole thing and edged the page, and then I splattered. Thank you so much for joining me. Give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, share my channel with your creative friends. Bye for now.